NBC's Saturday Night Live just celebrated their 50th season, a benchmark which only few have ever reached. It now sits up with the greats like the Today and Tonight shows at 70 seasons apiece, General Hospital at 61 seasons, Sesame Street at 55 seasons, and The Price is Right at 53 seasons. The show was started by Lorne Michaels in 1975 and has since hired 167 comedians to be on air, and has earned a reputation of scouting and launching lifelong careers in comedy. People like Eddie Murphy, Amy Poehler, John Mulaney, Tina Fey, Adam Sandler, Will Ferrell, Chris Rock, and so many others have SNL to thank for giving them an opportunity to show the world what they've got. But not every cast member really gets the chance to shine. In fact, about 33% of people hired onto the show do not make it past their first season. But why is that? Did they do something wrong? Were they not funny? Did they leave? Did they cause a ruckus? Well, yes. All of those yes at different times for different people. Today we're going to cover the stories of those 56 cast members that got the chop, what led up to them being there, how they did on the show, and what they did afterwards. Season 1 of SNL debuted October 1975 under the name NBC's Saturday Night, with musical guests like ABBA and Carly Simon. The cast were initially thought to be background members of the show and were dubbed the Not Ready for Primetime Players, which was a play off of Howard Cosell's show at the time, which actually was called Saturday Night Live and had his cast as the primetime players. The cast was paid $750 an episode, which translates to about $4,000 in today's money, which is actually hilarious because they get paid less than that now. The show was pitched as a comedy variety show, featuring young comedians, live music, short films, some Muppet-like characters by Jim Henson, and a host that rotates each week.
He's in love with Lily Tomlin.
She has my sympathies.
However, the actual format of the show was not really set in stone, and so there was a lot of shuffling and a lot of firing really early on. The original cast featured 9 players from various comedic backgrounds, our first of which was George Coe, who, at 46, held the record for the oldest cast member at time of joining until 2014 when he was surpassed by 47-year-old Leslie Jones. Prior to being cast for SNL, George had actually played 22 roles on Broadway already and had a career in the military, so I wouldn't say that he was particularly heartbroken about losing his spot on the show, especially because the show at that time meant nothing. From what I understand, his cut had a lot more to do with his health than anything else. Lauren has said in the past that this particular era on SNL was extremely brutal, with the cast and writers pretty much living full-time at the office. So it would make sense to me that the oldest cast member and the cast member with the most health issues wouldn't be able to keep up long-term. After his departure, George went on to have an acting career, being in things like Home Improvement,
Tad bit wordy, in a good way.
Gilmore Girls, Grey's Anatomy,
Rosie.
and The Golden Girls, as well as voice acting in things like The Legend of Korra and Star Wars The Clone Wars,
Violence breeds violence.
and even cameoed on SNL several more times throughout the following decade. Although the details of his illnesses were not known, when he passed away at the age of 86 in 2015, his wife made it clear that he had been struggling for so long that it was difficult for her to remember a time when he wasn't incapacitated by something. Although he was not on for long, George is remembered really fondly in SNL history, which is not something that I can say for our next friend, Michael O'Donoghue. Michael drifted in and out of school as a teenager and began his career as a playwright and an actor, even occasionally writing comedic pieces for small magazines. After a brief writing stint in San Francisco, he moved to Rochester, where he began to perform his own original pieces. I don't know if you've ever been to Rochester, but it's not somewhere that I would say is really excited about or down on experimental theater. So they didn't like it. They found it very disturbing, upsetting, and sadistic. Then he wrote a parody show about comic books that deep cut comic boys really like, but everyone else is like... He then went on to be a writer for National Lampoon magazine, which caught Lauren's attention, and he invited him on to be a writer and a player. Right off the bat, Michael was very difficult to work with and was extremely particular about who and what he would write anything for. Specifically declining to work on any scripts for Jim Henson because he, quote, doesn't write for felt. I, for one, cannot imagine taking myself that seriously, especially not if I was a comedian.
Next.
Season 1 was Michael's only season on screen before Lauren tucked him away back into the writing room. He stayed in the writing room for 3 years before being cut for office conduct issues, aka making people cry and just generally being a giant asswipe. And as we will soon learn, the show changed hands quite a lot in these first few years. When producer Dick Ebersole took over in 1980, he decided to bring Michael back, hoping that an old hand could help revive the failing show. But once again, Michael's volatile personality and mood swings made this difficult, and he reported liking only one cast member, Eddie Murphy, and he liked him because he was the only person who wasn't afraid of him. He lasted only a few months on his second attempt at SNL before being fired for pitching a never-aired sketch, The Last Days in Silverman's Bunker, which compared NBC CEO Fred Silverman's struggles to those of Hitler. I don't know if I can say that on YouTube, but I know you know who I'm talking about. And believe it or not, he was actually brought back again when Lorne Michaels took over again.
Sure, that's weird, but that's Michael O'Donoghue, the decadent philosopher of comedy, writer for the National Lampoon, and twice Emmy-winning writer for Saturday Night Live.
But he didn't last past the winter break. He wrote very little for the show, except for a couple monologues that seemed aimed at hurting the host's feelings. He later told the New York Times that SNL had become, quote, an embarrassment. It's like watching old men die. His final contribution to the show was a song, Boulevard of Broken Balls, which came out just 2 years before he passed away at age 54 from a stroke. O'Donoghue suffered from extreme migraines his entire life. That, coupled with the cause of death and frequent challenges with violent and impulsive behavior, makes it not unreasonable to wonder if he was suffering from some sort of brain disease that impaired his mental wellness. I don't have any jokes about that. It is just very sad. Then we had a pretty stable cast until we hit Season 5. Season 5 of SNL ran from October 1979 to May 1980 with musical guests like David Bowie and Bob Dylan. This season introduced the term featured players, which is still used today, and it shifted the focus of the show more to the cast. Most of the featured players from this season were actually just long-term writers who they put onto the screen, but not the guy we'll be talking about today. Today we're talking about Peter Aykroyd, youngest brother of comedian and former SNL cast member Dan Aykroyd.
Jane, you ignorant slut.
Peter's run on the show was short and uneventful. Him joining only 1 year after his brother left made comparisons inevitable, and after all that Dan contributed to the show, Peter just didn't measure up. Not that anyone had anything bad to say about him, they just didn't have anything to say about him at all. It's unclear if it was Peter or NBC that ended his contract early, but afterwards, him and his brother's career paths crossed again, and they wrote a screenplay together. He did a few more acting and writing jobs, but after the last project he worked on wrapped in 1999, Peter more or less disappeared from the public eye until he passed away in 2022. Dun, dun, dun! All you SNL heads out there know that Season 6 is listed as like the worst possible season of SNL there ever was. Lorne Michaels left the production along with the entirety of the cast at the end of Season 5 to seek out different opportunities and was replaced by a previous associate producer, Jean Doumanian. After 12 episodes of abysmal, terrible reviews, she was replaced by Dick Ebersole, who produced only 1 episode before cutting the season short due to the Writers Guild of America strike. The writing was bad, the jokes weren't landing, and the cast took the brunt of the hatred from the fans, which caused them all to be fired. And when I say the whole cast, I mean it. Denny Dillon, Gilbert Gottfried, Gail Matthius, Anne Risley, Charles Rocket, Yvonne Hudson, Matthew Lawrence, and Patrick Weathers were all hired and fired within 1 season for no real fault of their own. Denny Dillon was the first queer cast member ever on the show, although it wasn't known at the time. She had actually auditioned for Season 1 back in 1975, but not making the cut then didn't deter her from continuing to try.
Hailstones! The size of cannibals!
She was a high-energy and endearing performer with quite a lot of range, but like most female comedians, the public found her to be very loud and annoying. She had 4 recurring characters: Valley Girl Debbie,
I heard that it gives you split ends.
Mary Louise, a mentally disturbed child who scares people with her hand puppet, Nadine, a frequent customer at the Cut and Curl,
Earl got so excited about Mr. Ronald Reagan getting inaugurated that he passed the stone. But he's all right now.
and Pinky Waxman, co-host of What It's All About. After leaving the show, Denny continued to work in show business till about 2006 when she got a teaching job and has been teaching acting and improv ever since. Our next cast member, Gilbert Gottfried, got his start as an impersonator at only 15 years old, doing impressions of old celebrities in comedy clubs that his sisters dragged him to. He worked his way up the comedy circuit for the next 10 years until he was big enough to catch the attention of SNL scouters who hired him on for season 6. Gilbert's unique voice and facial expressions are what make him a memorable comedian today, so you can imagine my shock when I found out that was not used at all on his season.
What am I supposed to tell my mother? That I lost you to some stuffed thing?
No, that's ridiculous. Tell her it was another woman.
Right.
He was hardly in any sketches at all, and even recalled in an interview that his lowest point was playing a corpse. He said he hated the writers and they hated him. Simple enough. After leaving SNL, Gottfried had an extremely successful career in all types of acting and comedy, but perhaps none more successful than his voice acting career.
It's a cow!
This dude is in everything. Like, this dude is the Aflac duck.
Aflac!
He appeared in Fairly Odd Parents,
You're the reason I don't have any friends!
Cyber Chase,
You're right. We gotta find out what percent of these crystals is orange.
Bear in the Big Blue House, Aladdin, and all of those spin-offs,
I can't take it anymore!
Dexter's Laboratory, SpongeBob, Teen Titans Go, Hannah Montana.
Gee, you look terrible!
The list goes on. He never spoke about SNL publicly after leaving, and it kind of seems like it was just more of a blip in his career than any highlight of any kind. Gail Matthius had only a little bit of experience, but tons of passion for doing comedy when she was hired.
Use this to probe that. Check to see if there's anything like that. Then glide that along like this, like that, to see if there's anything like this or that.
Gail was a shining light in the otherwise dark season.
Excuse me for living.
She collaborated well with her team and worked closely with Denny to develop the Valley Girls and Rowena the hairdresser.
Nadine doesn't know it. But I didn't even vote for Mr. Ronald Reagan.
She paired up with Chris Rocket at the Weekend Update desk and appeared as one half of the Livelies, a married game show host whose home life resembles their on-air banter.
But he already has a home.
Yes, it's a beautiful 4-bedroom split-level Mediterranean villa, complete with hardwood floors and a brick facade.
In 2015, Rolling Stones ranked her as number 74, which is pretty high, of best cast members on SNL. And honestly, her departure from the show seems entirely not her fault. I think it really was just like, everybody got cut, so she got cut too. She spent the 90s doing some voice acting work for shows like The Animaniacs, Cat Dog, and Tiny Toon Adventures.
Ew, like this requires telekinetic communication, Buster.
But we haven't seen much of her since then. In an interview with The Vulture, she says that after she was cut from SNL, she ran right back into the arms of her boyfriend, and she said, I want to settle down. I want to have kids. And she picked up voice acting because of The Reasonable Hours, which is so much less exciting than I wanted it to be. Anne Risley actually got her initial start in the industry by being cast in one of Woody Allen's original plays, and after the show, he pulled her aside and he said, "You should move to New York and pursue acting." I fear that would work on me. I fear if anyone looked deep into my eyes and told me that, like, I'm destined to be an actor and I'm destined to be famous and I need to move to New York and blah, 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 like, it would work. I would do it. I wouldn't have a lot of questions. He then proceeded to cast her in 3 of his movies before she was picked up by SNL. Competing for female roles with the feisty Denny Dillon and the cooler demeanor of Gail Matthius proved to be a little bit too much for Risley's subdued delivery.
It's live from New York. It's Saturday.
Risley just wasn't a great comedic actress, but that's okay, because she's a great dramatic actress, so it all is fine. She went right back into dramatic acting after leaving SNL until she opened up her own acting studio in 1986, which is still in operation, and she is still the sole teacher there. It's a shame that her recognition stops at her really infrequent appearances on SNL, but not everyone's built for stardom, baby. Charles Rocket was the most featured cast member of this season with impressions of Ronald Reagan.
Is Frank Sinatra a hoodlum?
David Rockefeller, Prince Charles, and Marlon Perkins, and he also portrayed the previously discussed reoccurring character Phil Lively. But just because he was featured the most does not mean that he was the best. Gene seemed hell-bent on making him the it boy of the season, but it flopped at every turn. There were entire Weekend Update segments where he wouldn't get a single laugh.
Everything is okay? Everything apparently is okay.
and yet he was continuously pushed to the front. He was let go mid-season after saying the F word on air. The F word is He was saying I don't know if I can say that on YouTube either, but I guess we're gonna find out. He also did say the N-word on air, but that was in the script. That was on purpose, and he was not let go for that. Honestly, it's very much unclear if he was actually fired for cussing on air, or if he was just the guy who wasn't doing so well, and that was like a really good excuse to get him off. He had a successful acting career after the fact, so it wasn't that he was untalented, it's just sketch comedy is really hard. You can find Mr. Rocket in Hocus Pocus, Dumb and Dumber, some Star Wars stuff, some Star Trek stuff, some other nerd stuff. Yvonne Hudson, the first black woman on the show, was actually a receptionist at SNL prior to being picked up as a featured player.
No, you in there. Nigga, are you deaf?
Unfortunately, we did not get to see much of her at all. She was not included in the majority of season 6's sketches, and she just sort of faded to the background. Records of her are slim to none, and she never appeared in any other film, music video, TV show, nothing ever again. Basically, she was an SNL crew member who they would put in anytime that they needed a black actress because they wouldn't hire one. And they just decided to credit her for this particular season, but she had been acting in every previous season of SNL as well. In a very old interview, she said that she was the only black person in the studio other than Eddie Murphy, who was her close friend. Yvonne continued to play background characters for the next few seasons, but was never credited again. And Mr. Matthew Lawrence has done a great job of scrubbing his name from the internet in any association with SNL. I can't find anything on this dude. His SNL wiki is 2 sentences. His normal Wikipedia has 2 sentences about SNL. And he never did another interview about or with SNL ever again. So you know what, Mr. Lawrence? Lawrence spelled really funny? I'll give you what you want. I won't talk about you. I don't even know who you are. I only know that you were in one episode of Beverly Hills 90210, which I had a t-shirt for in middle school despite never seeing a single one of the episodes ever in my life. Our next cast member, Patrick Weathers, moved to New York City after college to pursue music and got a job at Studio 54, which put him in connection with SNL. He pretty much only played musical characters on the show and eventually decided that comedy just wasn't his journey. Like, his journey was music and he wanted to go back to that. He released 3 studio albums after leaving Saturday Night Live and opened up a couple of art galleries in New Orleans, which I believe are still open. Following the shortest and worst SNL season of all time certainly wasn't easy, but Dick Ebersole wanted to try. I know this is a bit of a time jump, but this is the season where Michael O'Donoghue was brought back for the second time, and he made for a really weird and uncomfortable energy among the cast, actually causing one of the cast members to leave before the show even started. That cast member, of course, was comedian Catherine O'Hara, which I would have loved to see her on there, but I also don't blame her for leaving. He seemed like a giant bunghole. Ebersole switched up the format of the show again and eliminated the cold open. So the words, "Live from New York City, it's Saturday night," were not heard until the next season. This new cast was made up of only 8 people, including Christine Ebersole. Not the same as the producer. Very confusing. Christine came from a musical theater background and brought an exciting energy to the show. She came right on as Weekend Update co-host with Brian Doyle Murray and captivated audiences with her impressions of people like Cheryl Tiegs and Princess Diana.
Well, on your wife's pregnancy.
Oh, it was nothing really.
I agree.
She was also really utilized for her singing talent and even sang a song written by Michael O'Donoghue called Single Woman in a skit that ended up becoming a Dolly Parton classic.
But beginning to lose hope. Last night I killed my husband. We were married 7 years. When I tried to hide his body, my eyes filled up with tears.
Unfortunately, despite her success on the show, she was let go at the end of the season, citing creative differences as the reason. And nothing further has ever been released. She's never done another interview about it. She doesn't talk about it. She just moved on. But don't think Christine faded to dust. She went on to win 2 Tony Awards, appearing in 22 films, 24 stage productions, and 44 television shows, including things like The Wolf of Wall Street, Steven Universe,
They're all just thrilled to see you safe and sound.
Hey Arnold, and American Horror Story. And yes, she's an active conspiracy theorist. But look at her face, she's so cute. No. Shh. Look at her face. She's darling.
You know, are you sensitive?
I say yes. My vagina is sensitive to being touched by people I don't know. And
fast forward to 3 whole seasons of stable casting, and we're in season 10, also known as the All-Star season, which went from 1984 to 1985. After Eddie Murphy and Joe Piscopo, they left, is what I'm trying to say. Joe Piscopo was a papa. Joey. Dick Ebersole, who is still here for some reason, wanted to bring in some big names in hopes that he wouldn't lose viewership. I guess it sort of worked, but then it left Billy Crystal, Christopher Guest, Rich Hall, Martin Short, and Pamela Stephenson with only 1 season to their names, when, spoiler alert, Lorne Michaels returned in season 11 and fired everybody. This cast is now looked on really fondly and considered to be one of the best casts of the show's history. In the 1970s, Billy Crystal was a part of a comedy trio in New York that eventually became a solo act, which propelled him into being featured on The Tonight Show, which led him to participating in the celebrity host of Muhammad Ali. All of this to say he was a prominent name in New York and it wasn't difficult for him to catch the eye of NBC. Crystal was actually supposed to be included in the first ever episode of SNL with a 6-minute sketch that was cut last second from production, which he still seems salty about to this day, and does bring up in interviews regularly.
He goes, no, I need 2 minutes. And I went, I'm screwed. I don't have anything that's 2 minutes.
In a sort of backwards turn of events, Billy had actually already hosted the show twice by the time he was asked to be a featured player. He did really well, which I don't think was a surprise to much of anyone.
I took one of them, meat thermometers? Yeah. And I just shoved it into my ear, you know, as far as it could go, you know, but then I took one of them, Philippine hammers. Right.
He did a whole host of impressions, including John F. Kennedy, Muhammad Ali.
I'm gonna knock you upside your head. I am still the greatest of all time.
Well, that kind of talk will get you nowhere, mister.
O.J. Simpson, and Prince.
I am also the world. I am also the children.
If you're wondering why he was playing so many people of color, it's because this season was all whiteys. Big fat whiteys. This looks like it could be a family picture. Not in a good way. He also had a super famous character with the catchphrase, "You look marvelous," that ended up being used in a Diet Pepsi ad.
They said they didn't look good when they went in, you know, but I got to tell you, my friends, that after 30 days there, they look marvelous. Do something, darling. You look marvelous. No other taste.
Since being cut, Crystal has continued his very successful career, winning 6 Emmy Awards and 1 Tony, as well as holding 3 Grammy nominations and 3 Golden Globe nominations. He even has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, so I would not say that he is hurting from being cut early. Most notably to little old me, he starred in When Harry Met Sally, in which I could hardly focus on because all I could hear whenever I would turn my head away or blink my eyes was Mike Wazowski falling in love. Which, like, that wouldn't be a bad movie, it's just not what I was watching. He can also be seen in Howl's Moving Castle, Cars, Luca, and The Princess Bride, to name a few.
True love is the greatest thing in the world.
He really hasn't been associated with the show since he left, but a lot of people think that that's more due to his lack of connection with Lorne than it is to, like, anything interesting. But when he is not hosting SNL, he is hosting the Academy Awards 9 times. So I think he's fine. I was shocked to hear that Martin Short had such a short tenure on the show, considering his close association with SNL and being a part of the ever-prestigious 5-Timers Club. But that seems to be a theme for the season. Martin grew up in Ontario and was on track to become a social worker, but by the time he finished his college degree, he had lost his mother, father, and a sibling. So of course, he turned to comedy. After moving to Toronto in 1971, he got a few acting opportunities that turned into bigger gigs. My man was booked and busy throughout the 1970s and 80s. He was doing sitcoms, comedy variety shows, commercials, feature films, and SNL only seemed like the next obvious step. A lot of his characters were holdovers from his time on Second City Television, including Ed Grimley, a geeky dude obsessed with Wheel of Fortune.
Maybe I should just sit down and try to act kind of casual so he'll be more impressed by me.
He also did tons of impressions, including Mick Jagger, Larry David, and Robin Williams. Martin clearly holds no ill will towards the folks at SNL, as he has participated in pretty much every special anniversary episode, and it seems like he practically lives backstage.
Our vacation either. It's so sad because my mother wanted to go to Tampa. I'm so depressed hearing this.
Marty has been nominated for 16 Emmys and 1 Tony. My man does musicals, plays, Movies, TV shows, radio. My man is in Arrested Development.
It was a stupid, stupid hire. Not hire, eye level! Eye level! Kisses, and then we talk.
Jimmy Neutron.
What galaxy are you from?
Treasure Planet.
A carbon-based life form come to rescue me at last. I just want to hug you.
Barbie's Princess and the Pauper.
Waiting there, so how could I refuse?
Frankenweenie. Modern Family.
It's all about lifestyle, really. I walk 5 miles a day, and I've had a tremendous amount of plastic surgery.
And even hosted 3 now-defunct Disney World attractions. I think he just says yes to everything. And he was a loyal husband to his wife, who he was married to for 30 years until she passed in 2010. And he did not go out and date a woman who was 20 years his junior, which everyone wants to do now. He is, however, rumored to be in love with Meryl Streep, which I think is very lovely and age-appropriate. Christopher Guest got his start doing mockumentaries and musical parodies, and in the 1970s he found himself working on projects with people who would later have some influence and some pull on SNL. Basically, he knew a guy who knew a guy who knew a guy, and it was not difficult for him to get cast. Like most members of this particular cast, he did really well, and he had several characters who were really well liked, including one half of Willie and Frankie, a pair of coworkers who talk about crazy stuff and then say, "Ugh, I hate when that happens."
Tighten it up and tighten it up, you know? After about 20 minutes, I hear this really loud pop, you know? Yeah, it sounded like
when you step on those empty beer cans at the ballpark?
Yeah.
And Herb Minkman, a toy maker. He hasn't spoken much about his departure from SNL, and he hasn't hosted or been a part of any anniversaries since the 15th anniversary. He's probably best known for his role in This Is Spinal Tap, but I only know him from Princess Bride,
All that I have and more.
Night at the Museum, and SpongeBob.
Thanks. I'll bet I'm even better at this one.
He is also married to Queen Jamie Lee Curtis, and they have been together since the 1980s. I hope I don't sound ridiculous, but I don't know who this man is what I said when I looked at Rich Hall for the first time. Rich started his career writing for The David Letterman Show, which he actually won an Emmy for in 1981, and he was a part of another sketch comedy show called Fridays, which landed him a place on SNL. Characters weren't really his thing, but he really shined in his ability to do impressions, including David Byrne and Vince McMahon. The more that I researched this dude, the clearer it became that he's more of a Robbie Williams kind of situation. Like, he's really popular in the UK. I don't know who he is here. He's done a ton of these 90-minute documentaries on BBC all about American music and culture, which is funny to me. It's like he's an alien. He's like an American alien in Britain teaching them about America. And he's released several musical albums of his own. Our next cast member is the only lady that we'll be discussing this season, Pamela Stephenson. After graduating from a drama institute in 1970, Pam moved from New Zealand to Australia to pursue a career in acting. Just 9 years later, she had gained UK fame with her part in a satirical sketch show, Not the 9 O'Clock News.
Full of moldy old relics that don't mean anything to anybody.
She gained a lot of attention for her political satire, which landed her on SNL, where she became a victim of her circumstance. This was an extremely apolitical and male-centric time in the show's history. Julia Louis-Dreyfus played the hotties, and Mary Gross played the weirdos. And in a world where those are the only 2 female archetypes, where does Pamela fit in? She was hardly put on air and really didn't get a chance to showcase her talents properly.
Well, if this witch did not get me with child then who did?
But she was able to sneak in some impressions of Madonna and Cyndi Lauper, but was otherwise alienated from the rest of the cast.
Yes, we're recording an album.
We're recording an album to raise money to help those less fortunate than ourselves, and there are so many of them.
She did not let it slow her down, though. Right after the show ended, she went back to the UK and started doing acting gigs as if she never left. In the early 90s, Pamela felt like she had reached all of her comedic goals and she wanted to try something else. So she went back to school for psychology and now has her doctorate and her own private practice. I love that for her. It's giving Bridget Mendler. Or Emma Watson. She's done some amazing published interviews about the psychology of fame with people like Carrie Fisher and Robin Williams, and she's written several critically acclaimed books on different things in psychology as well as autobiographies and biographies. That's really the dream, baby. Don't let them tell you you can't do it all. Okay. Full transparency, it's the next day. I was filming yesterday and I looked in my camera's viewfinder and it said oh, you've been recording for an hour. And I was like, oh, great. I must be making some good progress. And then I counted my script pages and I had done 7 script pages. There's 30 pages in the script. So I counted them And then I just looked at the camera, turned it off, and I went downstairs to my partner and I said, I'm not doing this video anymore. Like, I can't take it. I can't take it. But we're back. We're back and we're ready to sit for a couple more hours, I guess, and finish this out. I believe we were discussing season 11. So let's get back to work. I don't know about you, but I'm having a little bit of a hard time keeping up with all this like hiring and firing and constant cast shifting. But it's not always like that. So hold on. Except that it's for season 11, so strap back in. This season, Lorne Michaels came back after some soul searching, and he was ready to try again. He hired on an entirely new cast, and then fired them all before season 12 had a chance to start. Beginning with Joan Cusack, who of course has had a very successful run in the comedy world, but SNL just wasn't her spot. She didn't do super well. SNL was known then, and is still known now, as a really toxic and high-pressure work environment that not everybody is built for. Joan was 23 and fresh out of college when she joined SNL, and she expressed a lot of frustration that her big break wasn't everything that she wanted it to be. On screen, she seemed visibly exhausted and anxious, as if she was always running and could just never catch up. She left behind one successful character on SNL, Selena, a socially inept girl trying to ask out her boyfriend, Biff, who was also socially inept. She made herself so sick with stress that she actually ended up in the hospital, and seems to feel that in hindsight, being cut from the show was actually a great thing because it propelled her to try new things. She has since been a part of 63 movies and 13 television shows, including voicing Jessie from the Toy Story franchise.
Hello to the prospector!
It's a box.
He's mint in the box. Never been opened.
Appearing in Shameless.
For my daughter Karen's wedding reception tomorrow. We're having it here. You should come. You must come.
School of Rock.
All right, it's my head in the smasher. These parents will come down on me like a nuclear bomb.
Chicken Little.
You gotta get with my forever.
Kit Kittredge in American Girl, Perks of Being a Wallflower, and The Office.
So my question is, don't you hate her? I mean, I would just imagine that you were so angry at her that you would hate her.
Overall, she has said in interviews that SNL taught her how to be confident in something even when she knew it wasn't her best or wasn't the thing that she was particularly good at. But she has not been associated with the show since leaving, no hosting, and no anniversary episodes. Robert Downey Jr., perhaps one of the most surprising SNL alums, became an established comedy actor in the mid-1980s, so he was no novice when he was hired. Mr. Downey has gone on record a few times and said that SNL, quote, taught him what he wasn't. RDJ is famous for characters that extend whole movies and often entire franchises, like Iron Man or Sherlock Holmes, but small one-off characters were not his thing.
What is this?
Don't mind me, just go ahead with what you're doing.
What do you mean go ahead with what I'm doing?
He struggled to adapt to playing multiple characters in one night, and it showed. He also has not really had a whole lot of association with the show past leaving, but obviously he has had an extensively successful career. He did a few impressions, including Elvis Presley, George Michael, and Paul Simon, but they weren't good. Basically what I'm trying to say is that he took acting really seriously, which of course serves him well now, but SNL is not a place for overly dramatic, serious actors.
There's an old black man, he's got a hot dog with a white kid. Girl in top jeans, wondering what she did.
He was also only 20 years old at the time, and the writers struggled to write anything for somebody who was so young that they couldn't even drink yet. Like Joan, he really hasn't had much interaction with the show since leaving. No hosting, no anniversary episodes. But that's not because he fell off the map, obviously. He has the highest net worth of any SNL alum ever. I won't lie, when I read this Anthony Michael Hall guy's name, all I could think was, I don't mean to sound ridiculous, but I don't know who this man is. And then I saw his picture, and all I could think was, this man could be walking down the street and I wouldn't know a thing. But then I learned that's because the last time I saw this guy, he was 17, playing in movies like The Breakfast Club and 16 Candles, which were actually both released within a year of him joining SNL. So, big year for this guy.
Kind of detracted from the brilliant prose. Michael?
Well, I can't agree with Bobby completely here. Excuse me. For one thing, I want to say that Mr. Buckley's previous book, which was, of course...
He was and remains the youngest cast member to ever join SNL. He says that he had been a fan of the show since he was a child, but really being on the show wasn't exactly what he had imagined, and he was not ready for the competitive nature.
See, a tornado hit all around it and just totally destroyed the Midtown Kindling Company.
Midtown Kindling? Yeah. Used to be Midtown Furniture, right?
Yeah, right.
Since leaving, he has returned to acting and even dabbled in producing, directing, screenwriting, Trump supporting, jail, and marrying a Slavic actress who is 20 years his junior. On this season in particular, you might notice a theme of a bunch of really young, unprepared actresses and actors being thrown into this environment that was very adult that they were not prepared for. Our next cast member, writer and season 11 featured player Terry Sweeney, who was 35 at the time, really noticed and tried to be a helping hand when he could. Sweeney was SNL's first openly gay cast member, which was a big deal in 1985 when there were only a handful of proud gay people on TV. But instead of treating him as just any other guy, the writers forced him into playing exclusively queer stereotypes and exaggerated impressions of women like Diana Ross, Joan Rivers.
I really appreciate your loyalty, Ed.
Nancy Reagan,
First Lady, big deal. I'm so fed up with budgets and bills I could spit. Oh, what's the use? I should have listened to my agent and stayed in show business.
And Patti LaBelle. And while this is distasteful to us in the year of our Lord 2025, I can't go without mentioning that those sketches at least displayed visibility to a generation of people who were living in the active AIDS crisis and feared the idea of a gay person even bringing them food at a restaurant. His impersonation of Nancy Reagan was also particularly powerful given the Reagan's silence in the midst of the nationwide epidemic.
Oh, sit down, please. Do a little turkey neck for your evening.
In the years since leaving, he has done a few interviews and he has had nothing but praise for SNL and for Lorne Michaels, who he said always supported him. He said he regrets nothing. The public needed to see a gay person who was not dying on TV, and that's exactly what he did. He went on to write for a few other comedy shows before settling down with his husband in Los Angeles. Randy Quaid was quite a different addition to the season, being about 10 years older than most of the cast and already holding an Emmy, Oscar, and Golden Globe nominations for movies like Streetcar Named Desire and National Lampoon's Vacation.
Clark? Oh, medium rare, a little pink inside.
Oh, you're fine.
Randy was unique in that he both did comedic and dramatic acting really well, and he was really popular with the public. His most notable characters include a floating head from a Twilight Zone parody and Randy Rudolph Jr., a Texas salesman who sells unusual merchandise. He went right back into film after being cut and had a thriving career in the 90s and early 2000s until some legal troubles kept him from working for almost a decade. By legal troubles, I mean suing the creators of Brokeback Mountain because they didn't pay him enough and then robbing some people. With his wife. So, couple goals. He is now a crazy Trump man who appears on lots of podcasts promoting his conservative ideals. So, you can't win them all. Our next cast member, Dan Vitale, lasted only 2 months before being fired for reported drug and alcohol abuse on set. In a lengthy interview with The Vulture, Dan describes his issues with being the older and wiser cast member and the pressure to be a role model for these kids when he was struggling with his own addiction. He describes Chevy Chase's blatant homophobia in the writing room and his own struggles with not being the most funny person on set. Vitale continued to do small comedic performances until 2022 when he passed away. Damon Wayans began doing stand-up comedy in 1982 and, shortly after, landed a small role in Eddie Murphy's new movie Beverly Hills Cop.
Take this banana.
But his connection to Murphy may have played as much a role in his hiring to SNL as it did with his firing from SNL.
You just take a deep breath and then you just go. There it is.
11 episodes into the season, Damon was getting fed up with his lack of airtime. He wasn't as famous as his coworkers, and the writers just weren't inspired to write parts for him. In a sketch called Mr. Monopoly, Damon was playing his assigned role of a police officer when he began improvising.
Yes, we've got the whole transaction on videotape. We still got 3 people that saw you kill that undercover cop.
The cop, which was written to be very passive and quiet, was now flamboyant and gay for some reason. Lorne did not take kindly to this going off script, and he accused him of doing too much too soon. He compared him to his buddy Eddie Murphy and basically insinuated that you don't get to take liberties like a seasoned cast member before paying your dues as the new guy. Damon later claimed that he got fired on purpose because he didn't have enough creative freedom or screen time, but I'm not sure how much I actually buy that. After leaving SNL, Damon and his brother wrote and starred in a new show, Living in Color, which premiered on Fox in 1990 and continued running until 94.
Now do a silly clown dance for us.
Oh, played myself, huh? I don't think so. Homie, don't play that.
Since then, he has had a career in television and film acting as well as producing. His most recent project is a TV show, Papa's House, that is currently in its first season.
How come you don't rock with none of that new school rap? Because I don't know who any of these new school rappers are. They're all named Baby. You got Lil Baby, Dub Baby, Young Baby, Newborn Baby. These men need to grow up and get some real names.
The only other lady on this season, that's right, that is 3 women to 11 male cast members, was Denitra Vance. Denitra was the first black woman on the show aside from Yvonne Hudson, who was given barely any screen time, and the third queer lady, although she was not out during her lifetime. She grew up in the south side of Chicago, where she was very active in local theater and improv groups, eventually earning her BFA in playwriting and MFA in Shakespeare and performance, and moving to New York City in 1981 with goals of performing, only to face immediate discrimination, which sent her back to the Midwest to teach high school, where her students inspired her characters for her next show, Denitra Vance and the Mellow White Boys, which premiered in Chicago. The show had glowing reviews that painted her form of comedy as something really real and honest, something that made you uncomfortable while you simultaneously laughed so hard you peed. This got her noticed by SNL scouts, but similar to Terry Sweeney, repeatedly wrote her exaggerated black female characters with little depth or humor beyond the surface. Her 2 characters on the show were literally one called That Black Girl.
All right, I'll say it. That black girl.
And the other, which was a teen mom who gave advice on teen pregnancy.
And I'm in the 10th grade, I'm 17 years old, and I have 2 children.
After being let go from SNL, her career really began to take off, and she was winning lots of small awards for her roles in popular off-Broadway shows. And then she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Oh my god. This literally makes me want to rip the skin off my bones. Right as the world was changing, right as she was beginning to get this real big traction to be a huge star in comedy, she passed away. She was able to go into remission the first time she was diagnosed with breast cancer, which was great, and she did a few more things, and then she got it again. Oh my god. She was only 40 when she passed, and she is survived by her longtime partner, Mary Jones, who wrote a whole big piece on her and has been fighting to keep her memory alive. To be a woman. Ugh. By season 14, SNL was actually back on track. There hadn't been an insane amount of layoffs for 2 whole seasons, so pat yourself on the back. It was just good. There were no major upsets. It was just a good season. Most famously, this season brought us the really famous sketch of Wayne's World with Mike Myers, but we are not talking about Mike Myers today. No, we are talking about Mr. Zoolander himself, Mr. Alex the Lion, Mr. Night at the Museum. Ben Stiller! Ben joined the season a little over halfway through and lasted a mere 4 episodes, which may be our shortest tenure yet. He was interested in writing short films for the show, but he learned 2 things very early on. 1, sketch comedy was not his forte. And 2, they did not want him to write short films for the show.
That I have to get my mail at the same mailbox as you and Dad. Okay, I'm 30 years old. Don't you think I want my own mailbox? Huh? As soon as I get out from under my visa debt, I'm going to move out, okay? What do you want me to do? You want me to go and build my own mailbox, huh?
He left very amicably. He has since hosted the show twice, and he has appeared 10 times for different cameos.
Right, well, I didn't invite you anyway, because I already have a guest, and he's here. Please welcome New York's hottest male model, Derek Zoolander.
He has also had a very successful career in comedy movies, specifically featuring in a lot of films with his little boys club, with Jack Black, Will Ferrell, Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson, Luke Wilson, Steve Carell, and Paul Rudd. He is also very politically active and a valued philanthropist who helps fund childhood AIDS research, young adult voter registration, and protection for refugees. Pretty cool guy, I think. This is being filmed on February 18th, 2025. I don't know what he's gonna do tomorrow. I don't want to put my word behind a famous white man in his middle age. So, don't come back to me if he does something crazy in the next couple, hours. Season 17 premiered in September 1991 and wrapped in May of 92, featuring big names like Chris Rock, Chris Farley, and Adam Sandler. New to this season was Hold on. I need to look this up before I do a disservice. I gotta get my iPad out. I don't think it's possible to have a dirtier iPad case than what I have, so just don't Don't look.
Siobhan.
Siobhan. This is actually my Midwest is showing. I don't know how to pronounce any name that isn't Emily or Madison. New to this season was Siobhan Fallon Hogan, an American comedian and actress who was born in my college town of Syracuse, New York. Go Mighty Oaks. Siobhan made her TV debut in a 1990 episode of The Golden Girls, and I would be lying if I told you that I knew how she jumped from The Golden Girls to SNL, but here we are. Despite being featured on 20 episodes of the show, she had very little actual airtime and played mostly background characters.
I'm Jerry and I've got a bad haircut.
Mrs. Fallon was raised and still is a Catholic woman and has been known to turn down roles that conflict with her beliefs. I'm not 100% sure if that contributed to her lack of characters and lack of appearances on the show, but it doesn't seem like that would be that crazy to assume. For real, I think that she might hold the record for the least amount of characters within the amount of episodes she was in.
You're partying, you're not studying. Oh my God. You're right. After I finish this tall boy, I am on the wagon. Hugs. Definitely. Yes.
She departed from the show at the end of season 17, citing artistic differences as the reason, which of course lends itself to a lot of speculation. While filming SNL, she also appeared in 3 episodes of Seinfeld, which honestly earned her more notoriety and paved the way for her future roles in Men in Black, Holes, Daddy Daycare, Charlotte's Web, and Forrest Gump.
I'm Dorothy Harris.
Well, now we ain't strangers anymore.
As recently as 2023, Siobhan now dabbles in producing and screenwriting and lives with her husband and kiddos in New Jersey. Our second early retiree from season 17 is Beth Cahill, a Chicago-born actress who began her career doing improv comedy at the Annoyance Theater, who later had her star in their production of the real-life Brady Bunch in 1990. Beth, who played Marcia Brady, was scouted for SNL through this show along with her co-star, Melanie Hutzel, who played Jan Brady. The 90s seasons of SNL were particularly difficult for the female performers as it was impossible to stand out with the Sandler-Farley brofest going on. Beth's 14 episodes of the show were mostly dedicated to supporting roles. Fellow cast members Victoria Jackson and Julia Sweeney enjoyed most of the louder roles, and Beth's imprint on SNL is minimal due to her inability to break out of the quieter secondary character mold. Since her season on SNL, Beth has remained largely out of the spotlight and has not done any interviews to address her early departure from SNL. According to her blog, she has now taken an interest in gardening, and she is an edible landscape teacher in Los Angeles. Season 19 of SNL premiered September 1993 and wrapped in May of 94. Many of the show's most experienced writers left at the end of the last season, which made producers really nervous for this season, but it went off without a hitch. For some, getting cast on SNL is the pinnacle of their career, and for others, it's just a stop along the way. Sarah Silverman is part of the latter category. In 1993, Silverman was a 22-year-old recent NYU dropout who began dabbling in stand-up comedy. In a recent interview she did for the 50th anniversary, Sarah discusses how she didn't get an audition like is typical now. She was just scouted doing stand-up, met with a couple dudes, and got cast. She also reflects on the fact that if she had to do a formal audition, she would have never been cast because she had no impressions and she had no characters. Sarah was not only a featured player for this season, but a writer as well.
I wanted to invite you all to my Sweet 16. It's 2 weeks from Saturday.
It should be really neato.
Oh, did you hear that, Nito?
Yes, I did.
She describes the writing room to be a very male-dominated and wealth-dominated space with people who would get into literal fistfights over material.
Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. No.
She reflects on the fact that the show has changed a lot since then because things like that would not fly in the writing room anymore. Her appearances and sketches were pretty minimal, but she is known for her impressions of Cher and Joan Rivers, and she did actually return to host in 2014. Her career since leaving SNL is so vast that I cannot possibly cover it all, so I will just hit you with the highlights. Number 1, nominated for an Emmy for her show, The Sarah Silverman Show. Number 2, voice of Vanellope in Wreck-It Ralph.
That's right.
Hey, are you a hobo?
No.
Number 3, Golden Globe nominated in 2024 for her comedy album. Number 4, voice of Ollie Pesto.
Bacon, bacon. Andy, someone's trying to steal your candy. Thanks, Ollie. You're welcome.
Number 5, very politically active and currently involved in a lawsuit with Meta and ChatGPT. Number 6, Emmy nominated for I'm Beeping Matt Damon on The Jimmy Kimmel Show. Number 7, dated Jimmy Kimmel. I'm not trying to downplay her achievements by including a man. I just don't really think of Jimmy Kimmel as a person who dates, and to me, it is crazy that a beautiful woman would want him like that. Lorne Michaels credits season 20 as the closest he has ever come to being fired. The ratings slowly tanked over the course of the season, and as other networks smelled blood in the water, they started dreaming up other shows to fit into the SNL time slot. It wasn't looking good. Watchers of the show felt the comedy was falling flat, and many of the sketches lacked any real punchline or laughable moments at all.
Hey, you. I see you try to sneak in late. I not pay for you today. No way.
With the negative press and looming competition, Lorne felt that a change was necessary. So what did he do? He fired the whole cast. Janeane Garofalo is probably the most vocal ex-SNL cast member and has had a lot to say about her time on the show. She was featured a lot in her 6-month run and became known for her talent for impressions including Hillary Clinton, Madonna, Martha Stewart, and Pamela Anderson. However, her characters and sketches were limited to dull secondary girlfriend and wife roles. She has been quoted saying that SNL was, quote, the most miserable experience of her life. She said that there was a very heavy sexist attitude that loomed over the entire production, and the sketches that came from that were juvenile and homophobic.
My name is Frank.
Hi, Frank. What are you wearing?
Since leaving, she has been featured in over 100 movies and TV shows, including Ratatouille.
You think cooking is a cute job, eh? Like mommy in the kitchen? Well, mommy never had to face the dinner rush when the orders come flooding in and every dish is different and none are simple at all of the different cooking times, but must arrive on the...
Wet Hot American Summer.
You gonna clean that up?
Oh, yeah.
And West Wing.
Well, Lou started in college when I signed up for men's intramural softball. They were a player short. Turned out I was the best hitter on the team.
So, Lou.
Louise is fine.
Laura Kightlinger's tenure on SNL was the definition of getting the short end of the stick. As we just found out, it was a terrible time to be a woman on SNL. The women on the repertory cast were getting hardly any screen time, so you can imagine the type of attention that the featured cast was getting. She had a whopping 2 sketches where she was the lead, and although she did a great job, nothing stuck. It's incredibly disappointing how thoroughly they fumbled Laura.
I know what, why don't you hit me with a fly swatter? Yeah, that'll make you feel better, mister. Yeah, why don't you do that? Just hit me with a fly swatter. Yeah, right here in the moneymaker. Come on, Beamer, Weasel.
Her stand-up was so good, and the public loved her, but she just couldn't fit into the boys' club and was let go at the end of season 20. It's shocking that Nancy Walls never found a more permanent place on SNL, but one of the problems with the show lies in the fact that it doesn't always matter how funny you actually are, so much as how loud and abrasive you can be. Nancy's style of comedy wasn't as showy or obnoxious as some of her co-stars, which caused her to fade into the background. She had a few recurring characters, but they were mostly supportive roles, like country club wife,
Feel so alone.
church event devotee,
Mind if I kick your ass?
What?
and hotline operator. After being cut from the show, Nancy went on to feature as a host on The Daily Show and as a guest star on The Office, both alongside her husband, Steve Carell.
Michael,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Morwenna Banks was the 4th woman cut from the cast during season 20, holding the record for the shortest repertory player run ever on the show with only 4 episodes. Morwenna Banks might not be a particularly well-recognized name in the States, but she is more known overseas as an accomplished British voice actress, comedian, writer, and producer. Banks joined last minute as a fill-in and was not able to find grounding in her 4 episodes and was not asked back for season 21. It's also hard for me to ignore that Banks was an outspoken advocate for female comedians at a time on the show where that criticism was likely not taken well. Also, SNL has always been a North American show with influences from LA, New York, Chicago, and Canada, so it's not that shocking that the British humor didn't really fit in. Since leaving SNL, Morwenna has featured in voice roles in the Paddington television show and Peppa Pig.
Not long now, Peppa. Baby Alexander is coming too, remember?
As well as real-life human roles on Skins and Sabrina the Teenage Witch. As we have learned, there were quite a few cast members that didn't really get their shot, but really none more shocking than David Koechner. After attending the University of Missouri as a political science major, David moved up to Chicago in search of something different. He began doing improv comedy 5 nights a week, which led to some pretty important people getting sight of him and him getting in connection with Lorne Michaels. He quickly established 4 recurring characters: T-Bones the Drifter,
Hey, let's do this thing.
Norm Macdonald's funnier brother Gary, one of the fops,
Yes, indeed. May I second that?
and a drunk salesman. In a 2024 interview, David said that SNL was the most dysfunctional thing that he's ever been a part of, and it's a miracle that they're still operating. He says it's a sink or swim environment, and nobody's gonna help you if you are sinking. This dude has a really impressive resume with appearances in Anchorman.
I will smash your face into a car windshield and then take your mother, Dorothy Mantooth, out for a nice seafood dinner and never call her again.
Barnyard, The Dukes of Hazzard, The Office, Austin Powers, Reno 911, Larry the Cable Guy, Regular Show, Phineas and Ferb, Twin Peaks, or, where I know him from, Uncle Earl in Hannah Montana. He claims that Lorne Michaels had intentions to bring him back to the show, and that if he did, he would still be on the show today. I don't know how much truth there is to that, but sure. But I think it's safe to say that he has had a very successful career outside of the comedy sketch series, and that if they had kept him, he likely wouldn't have appeared in any of the things that he did after. The final cast member to get the boot at the end of season 20 was Chris Elliott, our first Nepo baby. Chris is the son of Lee Elliott, a model and TV director, and Bob Elliott, a well-known comedian. Chris got a job working at David Letterman super early on in his career and befriended Matt Wickline, who is the father of current SNL cast member Jane Wickline, who I am in love with. And the two of them ended up writing an interactive show segment that won them 4 Emmys. He had a lot of success in the 80s and was probably mega overqualified for SNL by the time he got there, but after a failed Tim Burton movie that had his confidence in the dumpster, he decided to say yes to SNL despite turning them down several years earlier. It was clear, even to the audience, that Elliott was not having a fun time on the show. He seemed uncomfortable and tense, and after leaving, he was quoted saying that he felt like he was too old to do what they were trying to do. It seems like he left before they really had a chance to fire him, and he quickly went on to do other things. His resume includes supporting roles on Sabrina the Teenage Witch, Hercules, How I Met Your Mother.
For the first few years of your life, your mom worked, and I was a stay-home dad.
SpongeBob.
Not so fast! That there booty be mine.
And Schitt's Creek.
Don't worry about me.
But he is still most accredited for his time on David Letterman. His daughter, Abby Elliott, went on to join SNL in 2008 after the departure of Amy Poehler and actually did really well, lasting 4 seasons. Woo! I was tired of talking about season 20, and good news, they went 6 more seasons before they had any 1-year tenures. Season 26 premiered in October of 2000 and wrapped in May 2001. This season brings about more names that I grew up with, like Jimmy Fallon, Tracy Morgan, Rachel Dratch, Tina Fey, and Maya Rudolph, but it was also the first season for the new guy on the block, Jerry Minor. Jerry was raised in Michigan as a Jehovah's Witness, and after rejecting his religious upbringing, turned to comedy as a way to cope with being shunned by his family. He moved to Detroit and then Chicago and continued making connections until he landed a spot on The Martin Short Show in 1999, which got him in contact with Lorne. His most notable contribution to the show is a sketch called Rap Street, which he did with Eminem. In a 2022 interview, Jerry reflects on his time at SNL as, quote, not as fun as it could have been, saying that he wished he had relaxed a bit more. He felt like he had been working so hard to get to where he was in comedy at the time, and joining SNL made you feel like you're at square one all over again, fighting constantly to get airtime.
I ain't scared of Deb Jeter, because ladies love C-Dog too. And by the way, Trevor, I'm looking for you, kid. And if I see you, it's gonna be mwah for you, son. That's straight up and down.
There wasn't anything juicy about his departure from SNL. It just seemed like Lorne had a few more comedians that he wanted to hire for the next season, and somebody had to go to make that happen. He went on to be on The Daily Show, Arrested Development.
I'm Officer Taylor. This is Officer Carter. Our daughters, Tammy and Monica. Oh, God, where do they go?
I'm on it. How can I help you?
The Office.
Jamaican, huh? I just read about the elections down there. Crazy stuff.
Oh, no, I'm not actually Jamaican.
Terrific.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Bob's Burgers.
The ski mask is a little cheesy. I think it looks pretty good.
And of course, Abbott Elementary.
Didn't I see your class having a literal picnic the other day?
Didn't I see your class watching Lego Batman?
Ooh. Season 30 brought about the departure of longtime cast member Jimmy Fallon, and in his place came Rob Riggle, who was the only United States Marine to ever serve on Saturday Night Live. He did a bit of a 180, and after trying to be a pilot in the Marine Corps, he moved back here, about 30 minutes from where I'm sitting, to go to school for theater and film. Or maybe he did that while he was in the military. I don't know how that all works. What comes to mind for me is that, like, in the morning you go sing and dance, and then in the afternoon you like crawl through trenches with your buddies, with your like ROTC buddies. He has had a long-time partnership with his buddy Rob Hubel, and after gaining some traction in the 90s and early 2000s, they both landed an audition for SNL in 2004. But unfortunately, only one Rob was accepted. His characters were minimal, his impressions were minimal, it just seemed like it wasn't really it for him, like he just wasn't clicking with everybody else.
I'd like to invite all denominations to join me now in a quick prayer. Lord, hear me now.
It doesn't even appear that he was fired at the end of the season, it just seemed like he missed doing comedy with his bros. So he went back to doing that.
Let's go on a couple of rides first, like the Screamin' Barrel.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I can't, remember?
Oh, right, the damn baby.
I could literally keep you here all night long going through Rob Riggle's resume. This guy's in like 4 or 5 roles a year, which is insane. But I'll just hit the highlights. The Office.
I'm Captain Jack. I'm captain of the ship. I'm also captain of anyone who sets foot on the ship. Hi, welcome aboard.
Arrested Development, Modern Family.
Look at you. Landed on your feet after the real estate business chewed you up and spit you out.
Didn't spit me out. I'm here to scare you.
By Sweeney Todding me?
Don't emasculate my move. I'm Seeley from The Color Purple.
The Lorax.
My name's O'Hare, I'm one of you. I live here in Thneedville, too.
Victorious, New Girl.
What's up, man? Winston. Nice to meet you. I'm Schmidt.
I actually go by Schmidt around here.
There can only be one. You know the rules. Oh, yeah, that right there.
And the Emoji Movie. I've been racking my brain trying to figure out why this guy feels so prominent to me in my memory. Because, yes, I've seen him in all those things that I just listed, not the Emoji Movie. I don't think anyone saw that. But I have definitely seen him before. But none of those were really, hitting it. And I was thinking, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that I decided that he was this guy. I'm pretty sure that my child brain just assumed that he voiced this character, and that's why it looked like him. I don't know. That's Ken. I don't know. Season 34 of SNL aired in September 2008 and ran till May 2009, with musical guests like Lil Wayne and Green Day. All the cast members from the previous season carried over to this one, and it was looking very stable and very good until Amy Poehler departed mid-season to go on maternity leave. Aubrey Plaza and John Roberts both auditioned but were passed over in favor of Michaela Watkins, another Syracuse, go Mighty Oaks, comedian. She moved to New York City after finishing theater school, but she had a really hard time building up her career there, so she decided to move with a friend to Portland, Oregon. She did more theater there, and then she moved down to Los Angeles, where she was doing comedy in a local comedy club when she was scouted. Although she wasn't on for long, Michaela became known for one reoccurring character, Angie Tempora, a computer nerd who runs a celebrity gossip website. And several impressions, including Joan Rivers, Glenn Close, and Barbara Walters.
Caused quite a stir when he said that he hoped President Barack Obama would fail.
That's ridiculous. Who is Rush Limbaugh?
Michaela being let go from the show was not only confusing for her, but also for the audience. In an Entertainment Weekly interview from 2009, Michaela reports that Lorne told her that he felt that she should have her own show, but when she pressed on that, he just said it had nothing to do with her talent, and she decided to take his word for it. She goes on to say that she had a wonderful experience and she regrets nothing at all. She has done a ton of comedic shows and movies like New Girl, Big Mouth.
Jessie.
Hi.
It's been an honor. Closure. And the dance continues, does it not?
Abbott Elementary and Modern Family.
All right, whoever made our son cry has messed with the wrong moms.
Lesbians.
As well as dipping her toes into more dramatic roles like Grey's Anatomy and Heart Eyes, which just came out and I haven't seen, but I presume is more serious. I mean, it's like a horror movie. I'm assuming it's dramatic. Maybe I'll see it. Oh. Okay. What's up, big kitty? Come here. Oh, you don't have anything to say now that you have the ability? All right. Michaela's departure from the show left a hole in the cast that was filled by Jenny Slate. Season 35 aired from September 2009 to May 2010, with musical guests like U2 and Tom Petty. Born in Massachusetts to a CEO and poet father and a ceramicist mother, Jenny was encouraged to follow her passions from a young age. She graduated as valedictorian from her preparatory boarding school and attended Columbia University as a literature major. While in college, she helped form an improv group, and that's where she met her comedy partner, Dave. Not Dave. Gabe. Jenny and Gabe's comedy act, Gabe and Jenny, eventually took them on to Jimmy Fallon, which then caught the attention of SNL, where she got on and said the word in her very first sketch. But she recovered from that and developed a recurring character, Tina Chanuse, an infomercial pitcher.
Get out the way, a baby ate a penny. Oh my God.
She was also known for her impressions of Lady Gaga.
This new tape was like a bad remake they did of Psycho.
And Kristen Stewart. Although there were rumors that she was cut from SNL due to her accidental cuss, she says that she just didn't click. In 2024, she discusses how humiliating and devastating it was to be let go from a show that she had watched since she was a kid. But she reaffirmed that she has no negative feelings towards the show, and she feels like the show taught her that when one door closes, about 20 new awesome cool doors open. Almost immediately after leaving the show, she helped write and starred in Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. Her unique voice has earned her a really successful career in voice acting with roles in The Simpsons.
My name is Piper Paisley.
Do I know you?
I have a healing beauty relaxorium in Shelbyville. Perhaps you've heard of Plop.
Well, it's wonderful to meet a fellow entrepreneur.
Bob's Burgers.
I know.
Well, what are you waiting for? Get us out of here!
Oh, it's broken. No! Okay, I fixed it.
The Lorax.
Mom. Come on, Ted, get into it. Dance with the tree.
Oh, it hurts, Mom. Please stop.
Zootopia.
Well, this is so exciting, actually. I mean, well, you know, I never get to do anything this important.
But you're the assistant mayor of Zootopia.
Oh, I'm more of a glorified secretary.
Despicable Me. Adventure Time.
Something in your notes has the quality of a powerful evocation spell.
Big Mouth. And my personal favorite, Clarence.
So, how'd you two lovebirds meet?
We met at a garbage dump.
She was eating trash.
And he was looking for a place to live.
Aw.
And of course, she's done lots of live acting as well, most notably as Mona Lisa Saperstein in Parks and Recreation.
Money, please.
Oh, no, there's no money.
Oh, my bad. No problem.
Oh, okay.
That's fine. I'll just destroy this office.
Hey!
Overall, it seems like Jenny actually feels pretty grateful to have this little slip up at the beginning of her career because it taught her a lot about the long game and sticking with it. Season 39 of SNL, which ran from 2013 to 2014, was a transitional time for the show. Longtime cast members Fred Armisen, Bill Hader, and Jason Sudeikis all left at the end of the last season, and Seth Meyers announced a planned mid-season departure to start his new job on Late Night. This left a big ol' hole in the cast, which Lauren filled with several people, including our one-seasoners Brooks Wheelan, Noel Wells, and John Milheiser. Brooks Wheelan was working as a biomedical engineer and part-time doing comedy in Los Angeles when he was picked up by SNL. NBC faced a lot of backlash for replacing 4 white actors with 6 new white actors, which led Brooks' dad to release this amazing comment on Facebook. Quote, "Please don't blame Brooks Wheelan for being white. You see, I am his dad, and I am white." This is another cast member where I look at him and I think, I don't mean to sound ridiculous, but I don't know who this man is.
Okay, we got Michael in front of the Eiffel Tower. He's pointing right to the tower, and his caption says Eiffel Tower. So the question is about Linda over there. What did Linda comment on that photo?
Looks fun. Where is this?
He got barely any screen time and was kicked at the end of the season. The only reaction we really have from him is this tweet where he says, quote, "Fired from New York, it's Saturday night." And he went right back to doing stand-up. That is all I got on Brooks. Noel Wells is a comedian, director, singer, and actor who has been performing almost her entire life. In her mid-20s, she moved to LA as a part of a comedy troupe and began appearing in various YouTube videos that got her noticed by SNL scouts. Noel said it was a complete dream to be cast, and she threw herself right away into what she was best at, impressions. She impersonated Emma Stone.
You're gonna hit me with that thing? All right, I'm done with that.
Gwyneth Paltrow, Kendall Jenner, Kristen Stewart, and Lena Dunham.
If I'm being real right now, I have like 100 questions about your hair. Like, can I touch it?
But ended up more in the background for every other type of sketch. In a 2015 interview, she reflects on how leaving SNL felt like leaving a bad breakup. She knew that being there was bad for her, but that didn't stop her from wanting to make it work. She recalls that it was like a boys' club in the worst possible way. She was perceived and casted as the cute girl and routinely treated like she was stupid. She imagined SNL to be more of a risk-taking collaborative environment than it was, and she said that it was the loneliest year of her life. Since leaving, Wells has found success in voice acting roles like Kelsey on Craig of the Creek.
Yeah, I like this one, but it needs to be more dramatic.
She has also written, directed, and starred in her own movie, and says she plans on being in the entertainment industry for a long time, so I greatly look forward to what she will do next. John Milhiser was SNL's only second openly gay cast member in 39 years. Ridiculous. But anyway.
Hello, it's me editing the video many weeks later. I don't think I said it very well here in the video, so I'm just gonna try again. A lot of people seem to think that John seemed really uncomfortable or uncharismatic, or that the scouts felt like the person that was on screen wasn't the person that they saw doing comedy. I don't know what these people are talking about. I thought he was quite good. I think people just don't like gay people. So.
The chemistry wasn't there, and he was let go at the end of the season. Since leaving SNL, he has been doing some small roles in YouTube premium shows and tends to stick more to pre-taped forms of comedy.
Want a beer? Sure. Do you have any? This beer sucks.
Things were back on track for season 41, which ran from 2015 to 2016. There was a really good, really steady cast, and it felt like it was only fitting to add a new friend. And that friend was Jon Rudnitsky. Jon was scouted in LA when performing with his comedy troupe and was brought on with virtually no TV experience except for an appearance on one episode of Criminal Minds. Jon did not get much screen time and is mostly considered a glorified extra. On episode 3 of the season, he did an impression of Anderson Cooper, which Cooper found very offensive, as he said Jon exaggerated his queerness and ultimately made that the butt of the joke.
And I hope I do you proud tonight, Kathy Griffin.
After that, he went on to do more successful impressions of John Mayer.
How can I ever...
We gotta use the force.
Tom Cruise and Vladimir Putin, but he just didn't manage to shine brighter than his other castmates, and he was kicked at the end of the season. His run was not terrible, but it was not notable, and as we've heard from previous cast members, that is just not gonna cut it. Since then, he's done a few one-off TV appearances, but just hasn't hit his big break yet. Season 43 ran from 2017 to 2018 with musical guests like Jay-Z and Nicki Minaj.
Hey yo, look like I'm going for a swim.
It marks Kenan Thompson's record of the longest cast member and brought us 3 new cast members, Heidi Gardner, Chris Redd, and Luke Knoll. But unfortunately, it was Luke's first and last season.
But you can make it up to me by taking me to the movies on Friday.
No, for real, like get out of my space.
All right, cool. Turning me down. Must be lesbian.
Luke got his comedy start in Chicago, and when he was on the show, he was only in 3 sketches for the entire season. Luke is known for his musical comedy similar to people like Bo Burnham, and so it was expected that that's sort of what we would be seeing on screen. But in an interview with The Vulture, Noel says, even though they hired me and I do music, they didn't hire me to do music. They made that very clear. He said that he pitched something every single week, which they liked, but then they eventually cut for time.
So, I mean, what? Are you just gonna have your calves holes sewn up too, or?
Babe, I'm keeping my calf holes open, okay? You'll still be able to see bone.
What about tissue?
Yeah. You'll be able to see all the meat inside my leg, I promise.
Season 43 had a really large cast, and trying to compete with 15 other experienced comedians was something that would be hard for anybody. He seems to be tight with some of the cast members still, and has even done some opening work for Kenan's private stand-up. SNL season 46 premiered a month later than usual, starting in October 2020 and going until May 2021. They started a little bit later in hopes of being able to film at the studio, but a little thing called COVID-19 made that impossible. The first 3 episodes episodes of the season were shot from home. In order for this to work, the role of the hosts and the musical guests were scaled way down and they were not able to participate in the sketches. There were only 20 episodes in this season due to pandemic concerns, so you can imagine that it would be difficult for newcomer Lauren Holt to make any real sort of headway.
Oh, I'm sorry. and Mackenzie, you got some makeup under your eyes.
Oh, yeah. It's highlighter. It's Rihanna's brand. On the replay.
I've also seen people say that Lauren really resembles her fellow cast member A.D. Bryant, and their comedy styles are similar enough that it would have been difficult for Lauren to get any parts when A.D. could just fill them.
And we were gonna wait to tell you this, but we're engaged.
Yeah, and we're moving into Rudy Giuliani.
She's been in quite a lot of things in the 3 years since leaving SNL, including Barbie, and I'm sure we're going to see a whole lot more from her soon. Season 47 premiered October 2021 and ran until May 2022, featuring musical guests like Taylor Swift and Charlie XCX.
I'll get older, but your lovers stay my age.
There was some minor shuffling to the cast, including the addition of Aristotle Athari, the show's first ever Middle Eastern cast member. Aristotle dabbled in film as a teenager and got his comedy start on some podcasts and an hour-long special on Comedy Central with his comedy group, Goatface.
Caucasian male.
It was a white guy.
Aristotle was really great on screen and actually managed to make some fans of longtime watchers, so it was quite the shock when he wasn't invited back.
Where are you from, Colin?
Oh, I'm from Staten Island.
Staten Island. Processing? Processing? Staten Island sucks!
What makes the most sense to me is just to look at who he was brought on with. Sarah Sherman and James Austin Johnson. Sarah was able to adapt her really surreal and unusual form of comedy quickly, and fans looked forward to her Jost roasts.
In other news, local one-point Colin Jost is keeping track of the amount of Jews at SNL.
Her close connection with people in the writer's room doesn't hurt either, but I think you would have to be dumb to not be able to admit the pure star power that is Sarah Sherman. And then you have James Austin Johnson, who almost immediately was cast as an impersonator for both Joe Biden and Donald Trump, making him a cast member they wouldn't want to lose. What I'm trying to say is, if you look at the people that he was brought on with, it makes a little bit more sense why he was unable to stand out and why he was the one that had to go. Since leaving SNL, he has been in a few feature films and will be appearing in the 2025 film Megan 2.0. Where are all my Megan heads at? And finally, we have made it through nearly 50 years of comedy television to season 49. Saturday Night Live's 49th season ran from October 2023 to May 2024 and featured musical guests like Ice Spice and Sabrina Carpenter.
I'm on SNL and you're not.
Season 49 marked a sort of resurgence back into popular culture for the young people, especially with the addition of Marcelo Hernandez, who has really caught the attention of the Gen Zs. This was the first season that I actually started paying attention to SNL. Whether that is because it got more interesting or because I am getting older and therefore I like SNL now, I don't know. Chloe Trost, our unfortunately single-season cast member, auditioned for the show the previous season and came very close to being hired, but was passed up in favor of Molly Carney. But after starring in a Please Don't Destroy skit, was reconsidered and cast for season 49.
I'm being honest. I have the same thing.
Chloe is a New York-based comedian, improviser, and singer who got her start in sketch-based comedy. I really enjoyed Chloe on the show, especially in her skit with Timothée Chalamet and The Moon.
Is it 'cause of my hair? Pretty. Is it 'cause of my laugh?
That's cute.
Is it 'cause I love just too much?
Not a chance.
As well as her impressions of Judy Garland and Cass Elliott.
Even if nobody else sings along.
She actually got quite a lot of screen time for a first-year cast member and brought a very young and fresh vibe to the show. Hearing that she was not returning for season 50, I think was more of a shock to her than it even was for the fans. She said that doing SNL was her dream, and being cut from it was like beyond devastating, especially as someone so young who was literally like, this is your first big thing you're doing. She didn't say anything about the environment or the pressure. It actually seemed like she fared pretty well under those conditions. And she was heartbroken and had to make a return to nature to cope. Which, like, girl, I understand more than you know. My partner and I lost 3 pets at the very beginning of COVID, and then my partner left to go hunker down with their family who lived in London at the time. The way that I returned to nature was crazy. My ass became a transcendentalist to cope. Like, every single day, I would drive with this camera. I would drive with this camera out to the lake, and I would take pictures of birds. That was my big thing. Like, the funniest part about it is that it wasn't birds that you would, like, want to take pictures of. It was, like, pigeons and cardinals and maybe the occasional, like, seagull. So the point is, I fully get it. Chloe's departure left a hole in the cast that was filled by Ashley Padilla, Emil Watkins, and Jane Wickline. And there it is. Mercifully, the end of my 30-page script about this. I cannot thank you enough for watching until this point, and I hope that you learned something. I'm curious to see who you would have liked to stay longer, or maybe who you thought really deserved the boot. I'm still personally bummed about Chloe, to be honest. I have delusional disease, where I read about and I research things like this, and my brain says, you could do it. You could be on SNL. Like, go audition next year. How do you get an audition? Doesn't matter. We'll figure it out. And my sister's the same way, so I know something in our blood is sick.